Hi, welcome to the Worry Workshop. This is the first session, so this is going to be mostly like it's an introduction and our very first technique that we're going to use. So thank you for signing up for the Worry Workshop or joining us. I'd love that. Okay, so our brain uses three kind of main mindsets to cause worry inside of us. And of course, there's all sorts of different mindsets that people can have, but these are kind of the main ones that we see when we are working with clients who have a lot of worries. The first one is intolerance of uncertainty. Another one is perfectionism. And the third is over responsibility. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about those three, and you can and I also will be giving you a quiz. There'll be links to worksheets in the email where you got this replay, and you'll be able to take a quiz for each one of these to see maybe where more of your mindsets are coming from. So the first one is about this intolerance of uncertainty. Says, I must be 100% certain. And if I'm not 100% certain, then everything's going to fall apart. Bad things are going to happen. So you frequently worry about bad things happening, such as your finances, your health, your family. You also don't want to make the wrong decision. And so you have difficulty making decisions because you worry about whether you're making the right or wrong decision. And also you feel like you must consider and cover all possibilities. So you usually have a plan A, B, C, and get upset if things don't go as planned because you plan them so perfectly, or plan them so because you're trying to avoid the uncertainty. And when things don't go the way you planned them, then you have uncertainty. The next one is perfectionism. So you feel like you must not make mistakes, and that mistakes will mean something is wrong. So you get behind in your work because it takes you so long to get it done, what is in your mind right. So there's a lot of procrastination too, because things take so long that you avoid them because you don't want to have to take that long to do something. If someone does something better than you, then that makes you feel inferior. So then you ruminate a lot over different social interactions because you're trying to figure out and compare who is better and what does that mean about me. And you feel like if you do not have high standards for yourself, then you're second rate. And then you have the tendency to hold back for fear of being judged by other people. Then we have over responsibility. And that just means that you feel responsible for everyone's feelings and safety. And anytime anything's going wrong, what part of it is your fault? So you have a difficult time saying no, and because you don't want anyone to feel bad when you say no, and then you take on other people's problems because you're trying to fix everything so that no one will be upset. You prioritize others' needs over your own. So then you have poor self-care. And then when someone is in a bad mood, you think it's your fault. So then you have constant worry and rumination about other people all the time because you don't want to be the fault of anyone's feelings. Now, these are just very brief overviews. I definitely want you to take the quizzes of each of those so you can kind of see more ideas about what kind of behaviors and thoughts go along with it. And I also want you to know that we all experience the things on these slides. So if, as I was reading these, you're like, oh my gosh, that's me, that doesn't mean you have some sort of anxiety disorder or you have problems. Everybody feels like this sometimes. The part that you have to become aware of and really think about is if these thoughts, these mindsets, create so much discomfort in your body and in your mind that you stop doing things that you want to do, or you don't sleep at night because you're always thinking about this stuff, or you have physical symptoms like stomach aches and headaches because of all this thinking and drama in your mind, then that's when we need to really be looking at how do we help these things. Everyone wants to have relief from these kind of overwhelming and stressful and worried and anxious thoughts and feelings. And what we typically do, because we want relief from it, is that we do things that actually make them stay with us longer. And I know it sounds crazy because, we're coming up with these things that we think are going to make us feel better, and they do make us feel better for a short time, but they don't actually fix any of these things. And what I'm going to be asking you to do in these different weeks with these tools and techniques is actually to feel worse first. And that's what makes working through worry and anxiety so hard, because it's not going to feel good, and it actually may get worse before it gets better. And so that's why a lot of people get stuck, because they don't want to feel worse, or they don't want to feel these unpleasant feelings. And because they're not feeling them, they're not processing them. So we're going to work on that. Okay. So our body has an alarm system in it that we absolutely have to have and want. And I know that when we're experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety, we would say we didn't want it. But this is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Now, there are others. Every time I look this stuff up, there's more things. And so these are the main ones, and these are the ones that make sense for what we're talking about. But, you could also look and see what else is out there. Now, this part of our brain has been in our brain since we were born. It's supposed to be there, and it keeps us safe. It keeps us alive, and we absolutely have to have this system in our body so that we can't turn it off. We can't control it, but we can turn down the volume. And that's what all these sessions are going to be about. And the techniques that I'm going to teach you is that it's going to be sort of a hum or a buzzing at some point. And we can all tolerate that. We can all go through our lives listening to a hum or a buzz instead of like loud speakers and loud sirens going off. And when it is super loud, which I know you've experienced, it does hijack other things like your thinking and your actions because you're so desperate to get out of that feeling. So that's another reason why I want to teach you how to turn it down. So that's what we're going to learn, is we're going to learn how to turn down the volume so that we can still live an amazing life and do all the things that we want to do. Now, I'm going to be asking you to try new responses to your worry, and some of the things are going to feel uncomfortable. Some of the things are going to take practice, because we need to learn to accept those physical sensations that we get when we're upset, the mental thoughts and feelings that we get during uncomfortable feelings. We need to be able to tolerate them. Tolerate them like growing pains. Now, maybe it's just been too long since I've grown as a teenager. I don't remember. I'm sure I had some growing pains, but I don't really remember them very much. But growing pains can be very painful for some people, especially, some people grow inches in a year. Imagine what that's doing to your bones and muscles as you're growing. Or maybe if you've ever had a baby, your body, as it's growing to accommodate that baby, has a lot of pains, but you don't think, oh, I've got to stop these pains. I've got to stop this, because you know that it's part of the process. And so what I want you to know is feeling uncomfortable is part of the process. And in our society, we spend so much time trying to make sure everyone feels good all the time. And there's nothing wrong with feeling good. I love to feel good. And I really feel like a lot of my life is. But maybe it's because I've learned that it's okay when it doesn't feel good and that nothing has gone wrong. And it's completely normal to feel uncomfortable sometimes. And think about the weather. We cannot control the weather. And we don't spend any of our time trying to control the weather because we've known since we understood weather that we can't. And sometimes we're disappointed in it and we're like, oh, why is it windy today? Or why is it hot? Or why is it cold? Or why did it snow? Or, oh, it's raining and this is ruining the picnic or whatever. And so we don't always like the weather about whatever it's doing, but we don't spend any of our time outside trying to control it because we can't. And that's what I want you to see about your alert system in your body. You can't stop it from doing its job, but you can tolerate it and you can turn it down. So feelings and emotions are a tunnel. They have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. And when we have an unpleasant feeling or sensation in our body, just telling ourselves that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to that feeling can help us to start to process them because we don't feel like it's endless or we don't feel like we're never going to get to the end. Now, some of them are longer than others, but they are all tolerable, and our bodies were made to process feelings, and all this alert system stuff that goes on that's so uncomfortable, that feels like we're going to die or feels like life or death. Our bodies were meant to deal with those things. We're not going to die when we have bad feelings or uncomfortable feelings. I don't like to call them bad. So usually when we feel uncomfortable, we try to do something so that we don't feel uncomfortable. So that beginning of the tunnel is when we start to feel unpleasant. And then in the middle, we decide to do something. Now there's some things that I'm going to ask you in these weeks to do that are good to help us to process through. But a lot of the things we've been doing, when I say do something, it could be choose to do nothing, but that's something. All of those things keep us either stuck in the middle of that unpleasant feeling and we can't get through to the end because we do have to get to the end in order for it to process. Or sometimes it takes us back to the very beginning. If we resist it or ignore it or numb it with substances, then we're staying at the beginning of it and never working through. People who are active or were alcoholics or drug addicts, the age that they were when they became an addict, and a lot of times that's pretty young, like 14 or whatever, let's say, when they go through recovery, they are back to that same age because they never processed the other ages, depending on how long they were in addiction, because they couldn't process them because they got stuck in that age. And so you don't want your feelings to get stuck in the middle because then it's still there. You want it to go away. Like the whole point of doing something was to not feel it. Well, you actually have to feel it in order to get to the end. So we do a lot of things that we think are going to help because they give us a little bit of relief. So just for an example, if you have a task to do that you don't want to do, like my example that I use with my clients is if you have a paper to write and you don't want to work on it because you're a perfectionist and you know it's going to take you hours and hours to perfect it, and that just seems exhausting and overwhelming. So you decide to watch a Netflix show instead. Like, oh, well, I need to take a break. I'm going to watch the show and I'm going to enjoy it. But then you just keep staying there and just keep watching another one and another one because you really don't ever want to go to that task. And it feels good while you're watching maybe just one show. I think if you keep on watching over and over more shows, you actually start feeling bad anyway, because then you're feeling bad because you're not doing the paper or the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And then you're going to feel worse when the shows are over because you can't binge watch forever. And at some point you still have to do the paper, and now you have less time to do all the stuff that you want to do, and it's still uncomfortable. So this is just an example, but that's how we kind of get stuck. And then we have to go back to the beginning again. And if you just felt uncomfortable while you were writing the paper, you could get through that feeling and not feel uncomfortable anymore. So here's some examples of other strategies that we do that we think is helping because we feel good at first when we're doing these things, but they don't change anything. So avoiding situations where you feel trapped or not going too far from a hospital. So that's people who have safety worries. And so they don't ride in airplanes, or they don't go in a boat, or they don't get too far from the hospital because they want to make sure, they want to be 100% certain that they're not going to have something happen that they need a hospital. Or they monitor physical sensations in their body all the time and analyzing what might be wrong with them. For perfectionists, they might be rewriting, repeating, rereading, all sorts of things, all their papers, all their work to make sure that it's perfect. And then they worry and attempt to figure out, fix, and problem solve everything because they can't have any mistakes, and they can't, because they feel like it's ruining not only their lives, but probably ruining everyone else's life. And then if you're over responsible, you feel like if you say no, you have to have 100 excuses about why. So you're making all these excuses about why you have to say no. And then you analyze everyone's response to you saying no because you're worried about how they feel about it or what they're going to think about you. And here's just some others that kind of fit for all of the types. Binge watching TV, movies, or YouTube, and hours of video games, which could be binge video gaming, scrolling and searching on social media and the internet, alcohol and drugs, overeating, overfunctioning, like organizing closets and cleaning everything. Now, all of these things are okay. Well, overeating is never okay, but like eating itself is a good thing. Using social media and watching a TV show, and I guess drugs aren't always good unless they're prescribed by the doctor and you're using them correctly. But if you're an adult and you use alcohol, sometimes that's not a big deal. But anytime you're doing it because you're trying to avoid something, you're avoiding a feeling, you're avoiding a task that causes a feeling that is unpleasant, then it's not serving you to do these things. So I know this is not going to be popular, but we need to get good at feeling bad. So in order to go through the tunnel to get to the other side, and that's a beautiful other side in the picture, we need to feel and process that uncomfortableness to get to the feeling that we want to. You have to remember that all feelings and sensations are normal. Nothing has gone wrong when you feel bad. You need to be able to welcome all of your feelings, good and bad. Well, pleasant or unpleasant. Sorry. I really want to stop saying that feelings are bad because none of them are bad. So today we're going to learn how to welcome our feelings. And this is one of the strategies that we're going to use this whole week. And I want to hear from you about how it's going. And when we welcome our feelings and we let them process all the way through, we're actually going to lessen how they feel. We're going to turn down that volume of the alert system when we do feel unpleasant feelings. So we're going to welcome the feelings, we're going to feel them, and we're not going to respond to them. We're not going to try to get rid of them. We're not going to distract ourselves from them. We're not going to try to close the door on them. We're just going to feel them. and they are going to run their course just like a thunderstorm, because we talked about the weather earlier that we can't control. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a storm. And we're going to allow the storm, because just like when we have a thunderstorm, we can't go out and stop it or do things to make it go away. We just have to let it go through and get done. And so that's what we're going to do with our feelings. So just like with weight training, we need time and practice in order to get good at this. Because if you've ever done weight training, or just imagine doing weight training if you haven't ever done it, the first time you go, when you've decided you're going to have a new workout routine, it's going to feel terrible. It's going to be hard. And 2 days later, I don't know why 2 days, the next day you feel kind of sore, but 2 days later, sometimes it's terrible. Can't even get up and down the stairs, or it's hard to get up and down from the couch because your muscles are having to relearn stuff. Well, your brain's going to have to relearn how to not pay attention to its alert system so much. And some people's alert system is way crazier than others. And so, that's why it takes practice and training in order to get good at this. And eventually, when you do weight training, you're going to have more flexibility. You're going to have more freedom in your movement. You're going to feel better. And the exact same thing happens with our brain. We're going to start having more freedom because we're going to be doing things that we used to be too afraid to do. We're going to have more flexibility in our schedules and in our lives because we're not going to be so freaked out when things don't go the way we planned. And life is just going to be more pleasant because especially when we're numbing and resisting and ignoring unpleasant feelings, it also turns down our ability to feel the good stuff. And so we don't want to turn that down. We want to feel amazing when it's time to feel amazing. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through the welcoming breath technique, but you're also going to get a worksheet that has it all lined out. And then I'm going to want you to show how you've improved. Just like with the weight training, whenever I have done weight training off and on. And when I try a new routine, I always plan what I want my routine to be. So I might say, I'm going to do 10 reps of 15 pounds. But when I actually do it, especially the first time and probably the first several weeks, I probably am not going to make it to 10 reps because it's going to be too hard. So I already have my plan written down that I wanted to do 10 reps at 15 pounds, but then maybe the first time I go to the gym, I can only do 3 reps at 15 pounds. So then I write, I wanted to do 10, but I did 3. And then maybe tomorrow I do 4, or maybe next week I do 4. It just depends on different muscles, get better faster than others. And you'll notice that about different emotions. Some emotions are going to take more time to get through. Some are going to be easier to work through. And so we're also going to be keeping track of our wins and our accomplishments, because we might not be able to do the welcoming breath technique completely through to the end at first, but that's okay. We're going to acknowledge that we did it at all. So in our welcoming breath technique, I'm going to walk you through how this works. But again, there's going to be a worksheet for you that's also walking you through this. And maybe you want to listen to me talk through it as you look at the worksheet, however you want to do it. But you're going to practice this technique every day this week. And you only need to practice it for about 10 minutes. So everybody has 10 minutes a day. You might, to actually work through some emotions, that might take 20. It just depends. But just to start out, just give yourself 10 minutes every day to work through this activity. So when you start to feel worry, stress, anxious, or just really any feeling that feels unpleasant, I want you to notice it and I want you to name it. Now, there's also going to be a feeling wheel on here so that you can start building your vocabulary of feeling words, because most of us don't have a good vocabulary for all of the feelings that we can have. And when we call something mad, but really it's disappointed, or when we call something sad, when really we're just melancholy, or, oh, what is that word I liked so much? I can't think of it right now, but, like it's not, melancholy is different than sad. And maybe you don't really think about what the difference is, but I want you to really start zeroing in on what is exactly the feeling. But whatever it is, that there's a spot at the top, write the feeling that you think you're experiencing at that time, and pay attention to where you are experiencing the most discomfort. For most of my clients, when we talk about this, it's their stomach or it's their head. But, is it in your chest? Is it in your stomach? Is it a headache? Is your heart beating faster? Where do you feel the most discomfort? And once you've located in your body where you're feeling that discomfort, I want you to begin to breathe intentionally into that part of the body. Now, you're just imagining this. You're taking in a deep breath, and you're going to need to provide space for it. So most of us are pretty lazy about breathing, and we breathe in our throat. We don't really breathe fully into our lungs and fully into our diaphragm and stomach. But I want you to just really open yourself up. Like the girl in the picture who has her arms wide, I just want you to make your body as expansive as you can as you're breathing in, and you breathe in and imagine that your breath is healing that part of your body. So it's healing your stomach, or it's healing your head, or it's healing your chest, or wherever it is. So imagine you're greeting that discomfort. Hello, stomach ache. Hi. We're breathing into it, and we're just allowing space around it, and we're healing that area. And you're just breathing in with intention into that part, and you're not resisting anything uncomfortable. You're just allowing it to be there. Each breath, just give it space. Let that uncomfortable feeling have movement and be able to move around in that space. And when you exhale, let go of any tension or any control you have over that, because we want to clench up around it. We want it to stop happening, but we're going to allow it to be there. And I want you to open your palms, because whenever you're trying to resist something, a lot of times you're clenching up your fists, or you're, tightening the muscles around that area. So just when you're exhaling, you're letting go of that tension, and you're letting go of that control. And just remind yourself, this feeling is necessary. This is growing pains. This is sore muscles from working out. Like, this needs to be here. And just welcome and name it. Hello, anxiety. How are you today? Thank you for being here. I welcome you into my chest, or I welcome you into my stomach, or I welcome you into my brain or skull, or whatever, wherever you're feeling it. Glad you're here. I even had a client that just in the last couple of weeks, she told me she was going to go to an activity, and she really wanted to go to the activity, but she was afraid of it because she didn't want to be rejected when she was there. She didn't want to feel weird, because she didn't know anyone there. But she said as she was driving, her brain was telling her, don't go to it. Just turn around. Nobody knows you're going anyway. It'll feel better when you go home. And of course it would have. But she just said, I just talked to anxiety like it was a passenger in my car. Hello, anxiety. Thank you for being here today. We're just going to keep on going to this activity. We're going to just drive there and just, you can have fun with this. I know it doesn't feel good. She didn't feel good while she was driving to this activity, but she just made fun with it. Like, hello, I'm so glad you're here. The uncomfortable feeling may increase. And of course, at the beginning, it's going to, because your brain is telling you, no, this is dangerous. Stop doing this. And so it's going to turn up the volume. It's going to feel more uncomfortable, but that's okay. You're just going to keep welcoming it. You're just going to keep breathing into it and healing it. And you're just going to keep breathing out the control. And the feelings may move around in your body. It may have started in your stomach and, you're releasing it and it feels better, but then it's going to go to your brain. Or that sounds dangerous. It's going to go to your head. It's going to, make your behind your eyes hurt. It's going to hurt at your temples. Just start breathing into that area. Wherever it moves to, be okay with it. Just let it move around. Let it get more. Let it get less. Just keep breathing around it. Just keep giving it space and allowing it to move around. Feelings do all sorts of things. And because you've been resisting them or stopping them or distracting yourself from them, you don't even know probably what your feelings do or where they go or how they intensify or get less. So you're just there to notice, and you're just there to breathe into them and heal them and breathe out the control. And you're just going to keep doing that. And then just keeping your body as open as it can, giving it space. Sometimes the feelings might stop, which you're going to feel some relief about that. They might start up again, but that's okay. Or they might be in a different area, or it might be a different feeling almost. So just allow it for the time that you give it. So if you're giving it 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, just allow it and make room for it. And even if your brain has a tantrum and it's just doing all that stuff, remember, as with toddlers who have tantrums, they do ramp up first before they finally give up. So your body is going to ramp up before it gives up giving you these alerts. And don't be discouraged if you don't make it through the first several times. This is new, and just give yourself grace and love, because you're going to be paying attention to, you're going to praise yourself for even doing this at all. And then tomorrow, maybe it was longer. Tomorrow, maybe you sat through it to the end. Who knows? Or maybe one day you sit through it and you're like, wow, that was easy. I love it. This is so amazing. And tomorrow it's going to be really hard. And that happens with exercise too. If you've ever done exercise, especially like yoga and Pilates and stuff, sometimes one leg, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. I've strengthened my leg, my right leg, but then the left leg, it's like not even doing anything right. So this is part of life. So you're just going to recognize that you did anything, and you're going to be glad for the accomplishment. Now, I want you to practice this every day. And I'm guessing if you're a worrier, it's not going to be hard to practice this every day, because you're always going to have stuff that you worry about, always stuff that you're going to be stressed and anxious about. But even if you're feeling in a pretty good place, which is wonderful, and I'm so glad for you, I want you to practice this every day anyway. And I'm going to give you some ideas of things to do if you need to find something to be anxious or worried about. And of course, I didn't even put on here, I just thought of this, but watching the news would give you enough to be anxious and worried about to practice this technique. But here's some things that I think are kind of fun to try to practice this breathing in and welcoming any bad feeling, any uncomfortable feeling, and breathing out your control. So sitting at a long red light, waiting in line, dealing with rude people. If you go out in the public at all, you're going to find rude people. Though I do find, because I believe most people are good and I look for the good in all situations, that I don't find as many rude people. I find most people to be fairly good. But I do, obviously, if you spend too much time in the public, you're going to see people being rude, and sometimes it's very hurtful to my heart to hear how people talk to other people. Arriving late, if you're somebody who doesn't like to be late, the anxiety of that. Doing a task that you don't like. If you have to go unload your dishwasher or go cut the grass. In our area, we're not mowing lawns yet, but I know my husband hates doing that when the time comes. And so it's like, what can I do instead of doing that? Listening to someone complain, sitting in a boring meeting or a boring class, listening to a political or religious channel you disagree with. I love that one. Also, turning on music you don't like, watching a movie you don't like, order food that you've never tried and doesn't appeal to you, going somewhere without your cell phone. You know, oh my gosh, how often do we use our cell phone as a buffer when things are uncomfortable or we're bored? We just pull out the phone. If you don't have your phone, you've got to figure out how to feel bored, how to feel annoyed, how to feel anxiety when you're sitting there not having something in your hands. Wear something that you wouldn't normally wear, because then you're going to worry about, oh my gosh, is this weird? Are people going to accept me? Do they like it? Read or listen to something that makes you sad. Some people are avoiding the unpleasantness of being sad. Sometimes we need to feel sad. And so, triggering that sadness so you can work your way all the way through it. I can't wait to hear from you how all this works for you. I want you can just respond to this email and let me know how it's working for you, if you have any questions. And if you come live to the workshops, you can actually ask your questions live there. You can even work through some of these things, because maybe you'll come up against something this week that you're like, this doesn't even work. I'd love to talk to you about it and help you work through it. And I know it would help other people to work through it as well. So please let me know how it's going, and continue to attend or be ready to watch each week the episode of, what's the next technique. And they kind of build on each other. So you might want to watch them in order if you get behind. I know sometimes when I sign up for things and I get a bunch of videos, I have to remind myself, start at the first one, because that's almost always when someone has a video series, they do build on each other, and these do. So it would be helpful for you to watch them in order. So I'll talk to you soon.